Today's guest, Aaron Alexander, he was a successful personal trainer who focused solely on building muscle and looking impressive in the mirror. But his singular focus on appearance led to multiple injuries, from dislocated shoulders to chronic back pain. And this wake up call, combined with the move to Hawaii, exposed Aaron to different approaches to movement and to health, which led him to discover a more balanced, holistic approach to fitness. He went on to develop the Align method, which has helped revolutionize how we think about movement and well being.
So I started off being a decent athlete, and I was
Mhm.
like lanky and not impressive to look at, but I was decent at ice hockey. Like, in my low level teams that I played on, I was like, high scorers and all that stuff. I was like an athlete. I felt like an athlete. Didn't feel like that growing up. I felt very like I never talked to anybody. My uncle would call me Mumbles, which is like so like not nice in retrospect. Like, why would you, as an uncle, like why would you do that? But I would just go to family get-togethers or whatever, and I just would not feel in place at all. I wouldn't say anything to anybody, just kind of feel out of place.
When did that
Different things.
transformation happen from the
Oh yeah,
external health to internal health?
Yeah, so with the bodybuilding stuff, that was, I started to become much less of an athlete as I started to feel like, oh, I want to pack on all this muscle just so I can feel I don't know, safe. I can feel like cool. I can feel like loved. All these different things. I was kind of hanging my hat on physicality, my worth on physicality, and inevitably the pieces. If you push the system hard enough, the pieces will start to either like wear out or maybe snap or explode or break. And so I started to have that where I was just from such an imbalanced way training my body, like really focusing just on like the muscles that I would see in the mirror, essentially. Like I was a big dumb animal, so lots of work on building my chest up and just all the biceps and all things. And then that led to a lot of issues. So I had shoulder dislocations, and I had like pretty much like chronic back pain, I would say. I had like an ankle dislocation. Just my joints were like becoming unstable as a product of me really destabilizing them through improper training practices. And so then that turned into me seeking out help, essentially. And also moving to Hawaii, I got into jujitsu, and started hanging around people that are into like different stuff other than just like bodybuilding. It's really environment, like we're creatures of our environment. So whatever the catalyst was that got me to go to a different pool, go to a different aquarium, being Hawaii. I think just being in that environment and being around different social influences, that started to form my mind and form, the way that I operated in my body, and what I deemed to be like, optimal for me, or like what my goals or desires were. They started to shift.
So you were a physical trainer, but you were lifting improperly, or what you mean is you weren't considering all of the variables that I guess more integrated, holistic people would consider today.
Yeah, I just wasn't so interested. Like I got great results for clients, but I wasn't so interested, or just, I was 16, like 16, 17, 18. Like I was, reading. I got my NSCA certification. I got an ACE certification. I read, a lot of my information came out of Men's Health.
Right.
And it was just like really like basic bitch kind of stuff. But I looked impressive. And so I think that's like your own.
The medium is the message.
The medium is the message. Yeah, for sure. And so I think I looked impressive. And so people kind of trusted me. And I was fairly decent at putting on like I don't know, almost like a front that I knew what was going on. And so I think there was like just a lot of acting going on with that, and especially being like a young person and essentially having like an adult job, like working with people that are like real people, they're like in their 30s and they do like real adult like life things, and I'm teaching them about nutrition and teaching them about proper lifting mechanics and creating meal plans and workout plans. There's like an immense amount of I don't know, like a imposter syndrome kind of sensation. So there was a lot of acting going on throughout that. And ultimately, I mean, there's still acting going on. There's acting going on in our lives all the time. I think that's like we're continually pushing our boundaries, which so you act into your boundary, and then suddenly you move through that boundary, and then you're not acting anymore. You're there. So I think that was a thing that was pretty present for me growing up.
And what was the catalyst that enlightened you to these other dimensions to health and exercise? Did you have an Obi-Wan Kenobi figure whose book you read or who you met? It was like, hey.
No one particular one. Lots of teachers, lots of like in-person teachers along the way, and then got into more, of specific people, like, books, and then the internet started becoming more of a thing. When I'm in like my like early 20s, it was more like, like social media is popping up, and it's like more of a common thing to get information off the internet. So I started to have more teachers, but I really got like kind of obsessive about finding instructors online, at least. Probably like 8 years ago was the beginning of that. But before that was mostly just seeking out in-person people to help me. So there was various different ones, but no one like especially mentionable.
Because you opened up an office, right, in Bend first?
I did,
like 2006 or something like that.
Yeah, so I left Boulder. I was living in Boulder. I moved from Hawaii to Boulder, Colorado, with a girl. So I wanted to be like a ski bum / like trainer ski bum. So Hawaii was like, I'll be like a trainer surf bum, and then I'll be a trainer ski bum. And then went to the Rolf Institute out there, and then so that was Rolfing is like a form of manual therapy or hands-on body work. And eventually I lived out there for about 5 years, and then moved to Bend again, just to change up. It's kind of like a molting type thing, like a shedding of your skin as a snake kind of thing. Like by changing the place, I was the student of this thing called Rolfing, and a student of before that I was already a massage therapist. So I went to massage school when I was in Hawaii years before that. But then transitioned and moved to Bend to kind of come into like a place of not being the student, but kind of come to a place of like, I'm the professional here. So I went to Bend and opened up an office, and that was called Align Therapy eventually. The first one was called like, I think, One Body. We did that for a little bit. I did that with some other people actually, and then opened up Align Therapy. And then in Align Therapy, that was the beginning of Align Everything. Align Podcast was the first part that it became like a, something outside of just working one-on-one with clients. But before the podcast started, my goals, hopes, wishes, desires, everything was to have a successful practice. And then I got to that point where I was seeing all the clients that I could see, and I had other people working with me and whatnot. It wasn't anything big. There was like 2 other people that worked with me. But it was like, cool, like I've reached the goal, and I'm 27 or 20, whatever age that was. And it felt very unfulfilling. And then
it felt unfulfilling.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Because you're trading your time for money. It's not, it's like it sounds great. It sounded great for me, but there's something about having the ongoing challenge of, I think anybody's like this, but once I reach the point, once I reach the goal, to me, it just becomes really dissatisfying. And so I kind of reached like the peak of what I could do with seeing clients. And then starting the podcast, that was the beginning of like, oh, okay, well now there is no peak. It's this infinite growth potential. So then the mountain just, it got dramatically bigger. Now there's like really like no top to the mountain, I don't think.
So when you say you reached the peak of seeing clients, that means you were booked all day long, every day, seeing clients. You had no more time to trade for your money. Yeah. So there's really nowhere else to go from there, except for maybe raising your rates or whatever.
Yeah, but it's just boring. Like there's not really anything that intriguing about that. And I have value and appreciation and almost admiration, maybe not admiration, but because it's not especially admire, but I have appreciation for people that can do that and just have a practice or have their 9 to 5 or whatever their thing is, just have everything organized and they're totally good with it. But for me, I just lose all of my motivation, and I'm just like, I'm like checked out because I don't have that thing that I'm like reaching for.
What do you feel like was your unfair advantage when you were building that first business? because I'm sure there are other physical therapists and people working in the same area, and people even who look good and who were, in bodybuilding and whatnot. But what do you think? Why do you think people came to you versus anyone else?
I think probably my unfair advantage. If I was thinking of it from that lens, probably my not just my dad, but like the kind of weird childhood stuff that I had. Being really like sensitive to social cues and how people are reacting to what I'm saying, and people that grow up in, I wasn't really like ever physically abused. I got like spanked every now and again, but whatever. But I didn't have any physical abuse growing up. They learn a lot. Like you learn so much, but having that hype, and it can become overdrive where your acuity becomes something that's like, now it's tormenting you, where it becomes almost like a PTSD thing, where you hear someone goes to shake your hand, you think they're going to punch you in the gut. It's like, okay, well, like let's draw it back a little bit. But having that exposure allowed me to, I think, just become a more sensitive and compassionate person.
Can you recall any stories where you like picked up on something that the person was your client was actually surprised that you were able to detect, but you knew it from your background?
Nothing really particular, but there's always, there's a weird space in the world of manual therapy or body work, or depending upon who you see, like physical therapy or chiropractic or maybe doctors, but people that like work with clients or patients. There's like an intuition that does exist where certain people have different, you call it like voyances. Some people might see colors. Like I don't have any of that stuff. What I have is I just get like these strong sensations to like, oh, you like work with the hip, or talk about, ask them about whatever the thing is, confidence, or just whatever. It's just like, whoa, like say that or do that. And so I don't have any specific like, oh, like this moment when that thing happened, but there was just many consistent patterns of being quiet enough, I guess, because when you're doing a session with someone, especially like manual therapy, especially if it's not just like I'm clocking out and kind of like massaging the person, but we're actually working on like engineering the body, and you're being still with that person, and it's essentially just a long meditation. And in that time frame, doing that for 5-6 hours a day, just going woof with the next person, woof with the next person, it really does start to turn on these interesting, like intuitive, almost like superpowers in a way. We all have access to all of that stuff. If you're like a businessman, you would probably have that when you're doing a deal. And if you haven't done a deal for a while, you might be kind of like rusty. You won't like pick up on things that you would. So I think that growing up in like a kind of unsafe-ish, like I was pretty safe overall, but like emotionally not safe environment, I think was really informative for me to be a more like intuitive person.
And so for you at that time, it sounds like success would have been equated to getting your time back while still doing the things that you love to do.
Yeah. Big on time, just big on ongoing challenge. The second that I'm being paid $20 an hour or $60 an hour or whatever it is, when it's like an hourly rate, I just lose all motivation. So when it becomes a thing of okay, cool, here's this project, and here's the amount that you're going to get, like finish the project, then I start getting, oh, there's all these innovations, like, oh, we do this and it's more efficient and it'll be faster. So just having that like challenge of any sort is the thing that really it makes me feel more content, and it can get me in trouble a bit, especially with like relationships. So I can start to have avoidant behaviors in relationships when I feel like, oh, like you love me, like you really love me, and so historically that's a thing that I notice come up in myself, where if someone doesn't love me, then it becomes this game for me, which is terribly toxic. It's like, I apologize for any person that I've done this with. But it's something that I've it's still there for me. I can like see it happen. So that sensation of, okay, you don't love me, you don't want me, I'll make you love me, I'll make you want me, and then once you do, I'm kind of done. Like, cool, I've now I don't know what to do because the game is over. So that's been something that's been like a kind of a reoccurring theme for me, I think, in general, which again harks back to me actually appreciating people that are good with just living seemingly like banal, kind of consistent lives, and being totally cool with it, and just loving football, and wings, and vacations. I'm like, that's cool. Like, I'm glad that you could be into that.
What inspired the move to Los Angeles? Since you wanted to get out of the time for money situation, you went down there and opened up an office. What was going to be different about this experience?
I think Los Angeles, I moved to Los Angeles the same reason most people move to Los Angeles. I wanted to take I was in like granola crunchy meccas of North America, all growing up essentially outside of Pennsylvania. So I went to Hawaii, and then Boulder, Colorado, then Bend, Oregon, and they're all just these like really amazing healing spaces, very like progressive, which now I don't really align with the term progressive anymore since last March of 2020. But places where people were into pretty innovative stuff, and so and lots of different like alternative healing, and just so I got to had the opportunity to gather to like develop my toolbox of working with clients and working with myself, and I'm still very much in process of putting my own pieces together, and so it's like I'm still looking for tools, and I'm still like right along the journey, haven't like arrived in any which location, but felt like the toolbox was pretty full enough, and felt like I had something that was special, which I think a lot of people moving to LA think they're special, and so I think that was the kind of thing for me. I was like, I want to go and like do something bigger, so do the podcast and interview bigger name people, and just be among a group of people that are kind of like having greater influence on the planet, which I think some level of that, it's a combination of maybe insecurity and like wanting to be seen, because I think if you really want to be seen, it probably comes from a place of feeling unseen. So I think there was a touch of that, and then along with a dash of actually having something novel and interesting, and wanting to share it, and cultivate it and develop it and be around other people that are doing similar things like that. So I think LA was kind of like a mixed bag.
Hey, really quickly, if you like this content or if you don't like it, let me know down in the comments, because your likes and comments are going to help me learn what you want more of. And then that way I can keep bringing you the good stuff. All right. Thanks so much for your feedback, and back to the show.
You were one of the earlier podcasters out of all the podcasters that are around today, myself included. You've been in the game since what, 2015 or something like that, or 2016?
Something like that. Yeah. I think it's been six and change years. It's like close to 7 years.
So did you find that was the moment where your impact or your reach really exploded, is through the podcast, or was it kind of quiet on those earlier days?
Oh yeah, when you start a podcast, especially, I mean, I got lucky because when I start, well, I don't know, lucky, I just did what I did, but there wasn't so many podcasts, so I was able to get like bigger guests, and there was just less, there was less competition. There's less things to listen to, and so if you got reached out to, say, hey, do my podcast, 7 years ago or 8 years ago or whatever, it's like, oh, okay, like this is interesting, like someone's going to interview me on a thing. so previously, if you're going to get interviewed, it was like, oh, okay, it's like TV or some big magazine or something like that. Then suddenly everyone becomes an interviewer, or a journalist. And so I was able to like sneak into that time frame and be able to get pretty meaningful guests when I had zero audience. And I think a part of that really as well is just like a similar thing of like having intuition with working with clients, having intuition with when you're writing messages, which I did a terrible job at many times, I think I burnt some relationships because I was too persistent. I know I burnt several relationships because I was too persistent. Some of those relationships I've recovered. And, you know, when you get to talk to somebody in person, you get to like, okay, like this is who you are. We can kind of, when you're like, you know, I was like just rapaciously just blasting out messages to people when I first started the podcast. Like I was really, I don't know what I was thinking. I was like a crazy person. I would like get up early in the morning. I was living in Bend when I started the podcast. I get up early in the morning. It'd be like snowy out. I go out and I have like little short shorts on, no shoes, go like running in snow. And I was really like, I was way more inspired in a lot of ways than I've ever been. I don't know what it was exactly, but I was like, yeah. And that inspiration could be really endearing to some people, but it could also be like a big turnoff, you know. And so I was a little overexcited, you know, just like young. And I think I still am in a lot of ways. Again, like this whole journey thing is like I'm still smack dab right in the beginning of it, I think, ultimately. But yeah, so I was just messaging everybody, you know, and it ended up working out that if I sent out 100 messages to people that would be, you know, pretty cool to record with, 5 of them would say yes. You know, and so yeah, it built from there. But the big thing with gaining any level of like traction with the podcast really was just doing other people's podcasts, you know. And so there was one, probably the primary one that got to a point of like actually like garnering me an audience of some sort, like to make me like, oh, I'm actually doing a podcast. Like I do a podcast, and as opposed to just I'm talking to nothingness into a microphone. Was, do you know Chris Ryan does Sex at Dawn, the book Sex at Dawn?
Yeah. I know the book. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's the one that popped.
Yeah. So that was really supportive. So he had his audience. He was on Rogan's podcast a bunch. So he had his audience, and then he randomly invited me to come onto his podcast because I was inviting him to come onto my podcast. And you know, it's just the way things happen. You know, you got to just throw a bunch of shit at the wall, and then sometimes some of it works out. But I was just hucking shit. You know, I was just trying to. It's like swimming. You know, you're just trying to tread at water. You're just trying to keep yourself up. You know,
I was telling someone the other day,
bump into a boat.
It's like dating. It's like you're always trying to date a little bit higher than your, you know, what you're normally used to. And so there's it's
a disease though. It's a disease. I think that's one of the biggest diseases of modernity is that you know, the FOMO sensation and always wanting to date up and friend up. And it's like the friend up, those people that you are your super bros, you know, that you know so well, and you guys are homies, and you follow each other on Instagram that you know for 6 months. They're doing the same shit with you,
right?
You know, and the people that liked you before you had some avatar, you know, and they're just really engaging with the avatar as a means to promote their own avatar, you know, or whatever their thing is. They're trying to build their business, or, you know, whatever the thing is. You know, I think those people are so invaluable because they just liked you. That was it. They just liked hanging out with you. They appreciated you. You know, so I think that sensation of always leveling up. It's like level up some things, you know, but also find appreciation in what you have. You know, there's a book, The Soul of Money. Have you ever heard of that one?
Yeah, I haven't read it, but I've heard of it.
It's a good one. Yeah, I really enjoy. I read, I don't know, 5 years ago or something like that. So it's a little blurry. But one of the bits that stood out for me with that was, and this is, I think, something that's been really supportive of me in my life, and I think it's like a law of the universe in a way. But in order to get more, maybe it's not a law. You probably break this one every now and again. Maybe to get more and feel actually content and satisfied. But you have to truly appreciate what you have. You know, so if you're always in that place of just like, oh man, this just sucks. You know, I think it's like, well, like, can you learn how to appreciate this terrible rain? You know, because the terrible rain is just an idea. That's just a story that you're, you know, agreeing upon in your mind. You know, it's also this beautiful, amazing rain. It's like, oh wow, it's like electric, and it's like enlivening. You know, so when you can put yourself in that scenario, and that's what, you know, meditation is. That's what, you know, doing any type of like hard thing. people who do hard things in quotations tend to lead happier lives, I think, because when you actually know what it means to suffer, then, which I don't think I truly know what it means to suffer, in comparison to people that like suffer. But you can't measure suffering, because ultimately, we're all having our own version of that. And just because someone on paper, it seemed like they went through something much more terrible than someone else, that doesn't mean the person that went through the thing that wasn't so bad on paper, maybe their internal turmoil and experience with it could have been much worse. So it's really hard to have measuring sticks on that. But yeah, suffering is supportive in a lot of ways. And if you can appreciate what you have, then I think it's like allows you to level up in a safe way to more. But if you're continually seeking more, and this is all stuff that you've heard a million times, so I apologize for doing like a rerun in your ears. But if you continue to seek more in the expectation that it will bring fulfillment, I don't know. I don't know if it's really. I don't think it happens that way. So it's like a gift to be granted a pile of shit every now and again.
So that's one of the things that I really admire about not just your work, but your overall presence, right? Because I've listened to several of your interviews, and you can speak to so many different experiences. And like you said, maybe it's because of the background that you had, but it transcends physicality. It transcends even emotional experiences. And you're talking about diet, you're talking about, your jawline, you're talking about your muscles, you're talking about, and this is around the time that you and I think, crossed paths. I can't remember exactly where it was. Maybe it was at one of those West Side parties or something like that. But
right.
I remember seeing you at the old little the plot of grass, I guess, is at the old Muscle Beach area or something like that.
Original Muscle Beach, they call it.
That's the original Muscle Beach in Santa Monica / Venice. Yeah. And you were like the acro guy.
It's where dudes in like the 50s and 60s see like the old school photos of dudes wearing little skivvies, and picking up girls up above their head and whatnot.
Well, when Schwarzenegger in Pumping Iron, when he was like laying out with his buddies and those girls, was that around where they were laying out?
Around there, yeah, around there for sure. Yeah. And so there's we've been to the old Gold's Gym. The Gold's Gym that Arnold worked out is actually a different place. So it's a cool thing to be in those spaces, just to like be in like the aura of it. I think it changes you. I think that places and materials and all that, I think it holds. I don't know this in an embodied way, but intuitively, I feel like it holds like a memory of sorts.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the tenets of the Align method and just everything that you stand for in that area.
Yeah. Well, the Align method is a philosophy, so it's not a specific methodology so much. It's really a conglomeration of the consistent principles that you would gather from most any movement practice. So whether you're weightlifting or dancing or doing yoga or maybe the different varieties of weightlifting, Olympic weightlifting or powerlifting or bodybuilding, there's consistent golden threads throughout all of that a person can really easily integrate into their daily life. And so for me, the missing link with working with clients was, we'd have these amazing sessions, we create change. It was awesome. They're like, wow, woohoo. And then all of their issues, and anybody that's worked with anything in their body or seen therapists, I probably have experienced this. I've experienced this. Like, I think it's pretty consistent. They come back and like, cool, pretty much the same, a little better, pretty much the same, sometimes worse. And so for me, the elephant in the room in that conversation is, what are you doing for the other 16 hours of the day, the 15 hours of the day? So looking at what's the shape of your home, what's your environmental conditions like, what's the ergonomics of your office? Have you paid attention to the manner in which you breathe throughout the day? Have you paid attention to the manner in which you use your eyes, your visual muscles, because they're a continuation of your central nervous system? So when your eyes are in that myopic focused state, it's a beautiful thing. It's puts you into more executive function, kind of like, sympathetic, like get stuff done mode, which is awesome. And then the other side, the duality of our nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, would be that so-called parasympathetic side. So the side that's in that more like rest, digest, repair, menstruate, digest, like do all the things that, your body does when it's not being chased by the lion, which is like the overused metaphor. And so when you relax your eyes and take in the panorama, look out a window, just allow yourself to space out. It literally sends a signal throughout the rest of your autonomic nervous system, like, oh, okay, cool. Like light can calm down. We're chilling right now. So then all of a sudden, intruder comes in the door. Do you think you're gonna take in the whole room when an intruder comes in the door? You're gonna look at that motherfucker right in the eyes. And you're probably gonna scream. Ah! And your eyes, like, who did that? What did that? It's your autonomic nervous system, your reptilian, mammalian, deeper self. It's like all of a sudden, whoa, that comes up and becomes the forefront personality. It's been sleeping there all along. It's been running the show all along. But then that scenario, that environmental condition, will start to draw that out. And if you step back and look at yourself, you're just like, wow, like I didn't dilate my pupils, or I didn't do any of that. Like I'm just being played by my environment. So that's like a far end of the spectrum. Intruder in my house. Okay, my physiology gets played by that. But that's also happening when all of the more, like seemingly like the gray areas of life, like it's still happening. You're still being played by your environment. But for the most part, the way that we're being played is we're hunching over chairs, we're in forward head posture, our shoulders are being rolled forward, might be developing like carpal tunnel type patterns in our wrists. We're probably not getting full expressive or expansive breaths out of our ribs and our diaphragm. And all of that sends signals. Essentially says that like you're losing in a way. And if you're losing, you might feel a little depressed, right? Which is one of the number one leading causes of disability worldwide. I'm just depressed. If you look at what is the meaning of depressed, it's to pull down. Well, what the hell does a body look like when it's depressed? It's pulled down. It's a one-to-one connection. So once you start seeing the body in these ways where everything truly is tied together, the way the person uses their eyes, the way that the person, their postural patterns, the way they express with their facial gestures, all of that, it's a window into who they are. It's a window to who they think they are in that moment. And once you start to see the world that way, you can't unsee it. It just keeps on, you're like, oh my God, like more, you just I want to understand it more.
Thank you so much for watching. Just FYI, we post a new video almost every day, so make sure you comment and subscribe below so you don't miss out on anything. And if you enjoyed this video, I think you're really going to love this one as well. And if you ever want to see a playlist of all of my podcasts or all of the plot twists or any other category of videos, you can find links to those in the description below.